Hello and welcome back to the Area Nerdy One Talk Show. Boys, you know that rule we had about not discussing Star Wars on the show?
I thought it was just the sequel trilogy.
I thought
They
we were
shall
take-
not be named.
We were just taking a break.
Well, we're gonna
Not mad Star
we're throwing
Wars. We're just disappointed.
we're throwing the rule out the window because this episode
Oh.
is about Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And, I think we're ready to talk about it. I mean, it's been I guess it was on for about a month, so we should say it's been a pretty quick month for this series, and it's a closure for this entire show, and it's something we need to discuss.
I tell you what, I am so excited to talk about this show.
Oh, dude,
Yeah,
I've been waiting.
A throwaway line in the original movie now gets its own series itself and an entire episode dedicated to it on Area Nerdy One.
Oh,
yeah.
Here we go, calling it out. So, guys, this show, what was it? It aired 10 years ago?
Yeah, so 2008 was when the CG one started. And then before that, I forget the exact year, I think it was like a year before, there was the Gendry Tarkovsky version.
Right.
That was the movie, right? There was the animated movie that came out and was supposed to be maybe a one-off, and then it wasn't received well, and then they somehow were able to turn that into a full TV series.
I believe
Well,
so.
Actually, it's kind of the opposite. So there's an interview with George Lucas, the bearded one true god of Star Wars, and
Ewan McGregor?
Oh yeah, that's right. No, he's the Jesus of Star
He's
Wars.
Jesus, yeah. He's the son.
He allowed God
He's the son.
to become part of the Star
George
Wars
is God. George is God, and his son is Ewan McGregor.
Yes. So there's an interview where basically George Lucas was like, they wanted to tell a story about the Clone Wars because it's like a little footnote in the story of Anakin Skywalker. And he's like, okay, so then he got together with Gendry Tarkovsky and they put together it was basically like a one-off series,
Right.
which was the original cartoon. And he's like, it came out so good that he's like, hey, why don't they're like, okay, we can make a full series about this. And they started making the CG series, and they're like, this is so good, we can make a full movie about it. And they made a full movie about it, and that was like the worst part of the entire series because it was like, I don't know, have you seen that one?
I haven't seen that one. I actually, honestly, I thought it was like a mix-up because when I first saw it I think it was on Netflix when I first saw the description of it, and I was like, wait a minute, is this the show? Why does it say an hour and something minutes? I didn't understand, so I just skipped over, and right next to it was the Clone Wars series. So I'm assuming it was just like a mix-up. So I just went with the series, and I watched it. Actually, I watched it on time as it was on TV. Believe it or not, but
I don't believe it.
That's just
So,
me.
so yeah, the movie was like kind of like story-wise, it's kind of a pilot for the series, and it's very very super kidsy. I remember it. It was like, they introduced like Ahsoka Tano and she's like 12 or something. So like, that's the demo they're going for.
Yeah,
And
she was young.
It was just very kind of hokey and kidsy.
The baby Jabba the Hutt.
Oh yeah, the baby Jabba the Hutt.
The whole Hutt family, really.
They had a massive early misfire with their attempted Baby Yoda franchise.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the good thing about the Clone Wars too is that they brought a lot of these classic characters out. Like, they brought out Boba Fett as a child and how he kind of like fitted in with the during the Clone Wars, kind of being undercover, trying to almost sabotage the entire the whole fleet or whatever.
Yeah, that's what it eventually turned into. It was like very, not necessarily dark, but it was one
Serious.
of those shows that's like, okay, it's on Cartoon Network, it's for kids, but also adults could watch it, and it's pretty intense. Like there are some very like
intense scenes.
yeah,
and
like
there's-
perhaps the most intense scenes in Star Wars are in that show.
Yeah, and it brought out a lot of the lore that we wanted to like kind of fill in those blanks, because there's a lot of things, between the times of Attack of the Clones and Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, we didn't really know much about the Clone Wars at all, besides obviously the cartoon version of what we saw on Cartoon Network for a while, and we were just like, all right, these little random events of battles that we don't know anything about besides,
Right.
Asajj Ventress, Anakin Skywalker's build up to the Jedi Knighthood and stuff like that. And, I think that a lot of it was just a great way to fill in those blanks that we wanted to know. And especially the last season of the Clone Wars, that's
Holy God, the
Yeah.
last season of the Clone Wars.
So just so you guys know, I have not seen it. So this is a spoiler alert for me. So I'm still gonna get this spoiled. But if you haven't seen that,
So,
know,
You're
so
you're
everything
all gonna
that
get to
Garrett
watch
says.
this get spoiled in real time.
yeah,
Yeah.
But the thing I didn't like about just so like I have seen some of the snippets of the Clone Wars series before this. The one thing I didn't like about it is how they handled General Grievous. You know, I always thought he was gonna be like the badass character, you know, of the Clone Wars series, and then he turned to be this like, you know, runaway kind of guy, and then always getting his hands cut off.
Yeah,
So-
it's kind of weird.
Well, credit where credit's due. So, true enough, like they did make him kind of a wuss, but the Clone Wars series, General Grievous, the movie General Grievous, like the God, well, how do I describe it?
There's
The
like
Revenge of the Sith
literally
version
there's
of
three
him.
General Grievouses. The one that's in the actual movie, the one in the original Samurai Jack Cartoon Network series,
Yeah.
and then there's the one in the Clone Wars,
Yeah, exactly. So
and then there's the one in the non-canon stuff. So there's actually 4.
yeah,
Right,
so
yeah.
they have a hat. Like I've always mentioned, one of my biggest pet peeves with Star Wars is they make the like canon movies. They make the characters like just complete wusses and pushovers. General Grievous being one of the biggest examples, and then the extended materials, they're like, okay, he's actually kind of a badass,
Yep.
and they make them do awesome stuff.
Because especially
And, like-
especially in the cartoon version, you know, we saw that, you know, that one scene where you see actually a character that looks like Shaggy from Scooby Doo, and
Yeah.
he's like a Padawan
yeah.
learner,
Get crushed.
and he just like runs out like this blaze of glory, and all of a sudden he gets killed, and you're wondering like who's this who's doing this, and they make him seem like a mysterious crazy character, and then he like comes down and just assassinates everyone. But I didn't
Yeah,
get
he
the
holds
same
up like 6 Jedi at one time.
yeah,
Yeah.
because when I first saw that cartoon, I was so amazed at how they, you know, kind of released his character.
Push his character forward, and
Yeah.
that, even though you knew who it was, you were like, "Who? This is like a completely different character."
Right, and he was.
Yeah,
I was like,
but,
"Who the
like-
hell's this guy?" At first, you know, it's funny because I actually had to look that up after I saw the movie. I had to look it up because I was like, "There's something wrong here," because this is not the same character I saw back in the cartoon. And that in the
Yeah.
cartoon, you're like, "Oh, who's this guy? He's a badass. You know, he can't die." And then of
Yeah,
course you
and
watch
then-
episode 3, it's like, what the hell?
But like he like they kept saying like he keeps running away, but like in the extended material that was now non-canon, he was like a guerrilla fighter, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why he keeps running away, you know, to fight another day kind of thing. So I always thought that was a cool snippet that made his character actually make sense. You know, why he keeps running away. He doesn't have to stay with his men because they're droids. Who cares about them? So
Right.
like
Good point.
That makes a good point. But anyway, back to the main story at hand. The new season of Star Wars.
Okay.
Clone Wars.
Now,
All right.
The movie.
So why don't we divvy it up into the three arcs that they have, starting with the Bad Batch arc.
well, okay. So, also before, you know, getting into that, we also need to look at the intros for these episodes, because, you know, when we were watching the last season, the beginning, it's a regular Clone Wars intro, you know, like the shows the Clone Wars, then it gives you like the quote, and then it goes on to the episode. But the last
Yeah.
4, you know, obviously, because it was in event with episode 3, it had the actual regular Star Wars scroller music, and I think that's what kind of was like an amazing thing about this this ending series, I guess, at the last
It
4
was-
episodes.
It was definitely more of a bridge to the movies and the Revenge of the Sith.
Yes, and it was oh god, it was great. It was a great way to kind of figure out where it takes place in time of the movie, of the actual movie itself. But yeah, going back to the arc with the Bad Batch, what's it called? Bad Batch 99, which is actually named after that clone that had the hunchback.
Yeah.
He was a Bad Batch, considering, and I guess because of his heart of gold of being a clone, you know. He
And all those clones were defective in some way, though.
They had mutations, like, so
Yeah.
there was one their leader had like excellent senses, and he looks like freaking Snake from Metal Gear Solid, almost, like, except without an eye patch.
yeah,
and,
he did. Oh my gosh.
He and then they had like one that was like really smart, and then they had one that's like big and has like super strength, and one that was like the silent sniper, and I think that's all of them. Yeah. And they're like, you know, when the clones first see them, they're like, they're clones, and they're like, they don't look like clones because they're all actually so like different. They look like different people
Right.
than
And-
Jango Fett.
Which I mean, obviously these little episodes in the last season were definitely little fillers to kind of help us kind of come closure to a lot of characters, like especially Echo and Rex's relationship with Echo, because we all thought that Echo was dead, obviously, because they didn't really reveal anything what happened besides the explosion. And when you see him back in the what was it, I think like the third episode, he comes in and he's like hanging from a machine, pretty much robotic and everything.
He's got like Matrix plugs all over him.
Yeah, he's definitely been mind controlled and everything, used for data and revealing the Republic plans, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, when they brought in Echo, that was a great way to kind of answer that question about what happened to him, because we all thought he died. I mean, they pretty much gave it out like he died because his helmet like bounced on the concrete, and obviously after the explosion.
Yeah.
But I think that was a great way to kind of bring that character back in and bring him into the Bad Batch.
Much like Boba Fett, you can't keep a good Temuera Morrison down.
No, you can.
Or Rex himself.
Yeah, or Rex himself. Yeah, okay, we'll get to that later. But okay, so so you described it pretty well. My basic impression, the Bad Batch arc, just like solid Clone Wars arc. Like they basically I feel like they started off, it's like, okay, this is definitely the Clone Wars, and here's an arc that's gonna get you hooked and keep you in it. And obviously, like, you go in, it's like, okay, it might just be another Clone Wars arc, but the effects, like some of the, like the battle scenes were freaking amazing. Like they had like some like, shot point of view.
It's smoother.
It was smooth. It was intense. Yeah.
I think the last season in general was very smooth. And also, did you notice they kind of changed the format of the characters a little bit, how they look? They kind of look more human-like and not just like animated.
Yeah, a little bit less caricature.
Yeah, so they actually have like body structure, not some like skeleton-looking, characters. Because I thought that was a good touch on them.
Well, I think their budget for this last season was way higher than their other seasons as well, because they also had they had a lot riding on this season.
Yeah.
So they had probably put in a lot more effort and time.
And they had a lot more time too.
Yeah, and considering that, I'm kind of glad that it happened the way it did, because it gave us like a lot. We had to wait freaking 1,000 years.
It's been 83 years.
It's been 83 years, and buy a subscription to Disney Plus, but we ended up actually seeing like a. Bless me. May the Force be with me.
Yes.
We ended up actually seeing like a 10 times better product than we would have seen if it had aired on television.